Right, welcome back to the lecture. Okay, so today we are going to talk about exception handling. So, what does it mean by exception handling? Okay, very simple. Exception handling is also known as error handling. Okay, means how you want to handle your error gracefully. So, when something happens to your program, so how you want to handle your error. Okay, so why do we need exception handling? Is because we don't want to leave our user to become unknown of the situation. Okay, let's say something happened, okay, to our program, so you have to let the user know what is wrong with the program. Okay, and also it's not to freak out the user with all those technical message that only the programmer will understand. Okay, so that is the reason why we need to do exception handling. Okay, in every program, it is always encouraged to do exception handling. Okay, so it is good for us to handle our error gracefully. Okay, because if you have error to the user's perspective, they don't know that this is actually the error. Okay, because they will think that, oh, this is not a good program. Okay, so it will affect the user's perspective or the user's experience towards the program. Okay, so later on we will go through on how do we actually do exception handling. Okay, actually it's pretty easy. Okay, all right, so let's move on to our practical section. Okay, so here is our practical section. So in order for us to do exception handling, it is very simple. Okay, so let's have a main method. Okay, so let's try on some common exceptions that we need to handle. Okay, especially when we deal with scanner. Okay, so when we deal with user input, so we have to be extra careful on the what we call the user input. So we have to sanitize our input first. Okay, so this is the best example for us to do exceptions handling. Okay, so in order for us to to get the user input is very simple. So all we need to do is just write a print statement. So enter a digit list, for example. Okay, so in order for us to hold this value, we have learned in the previous video. So what we need to do is we need to use the correct methods. Okay, so in this case, we are going to use next integer. Okay, so this look perfectly fine. Okay, it looks perfectly fine. It seems like nothing error here, but what if the user enter any characters or letters in this case? Okay, because we are expecting integer here, but what if the user accidentally enter a character or letter? How should we handle in this case? Okay, so it's actually very simple. Okay, so we can use something which is what we call as a try catch statement. Okay, so this is actually the try catch statement. So let me finish the thing first. I'll explain the code later on. Okay, so this is what we call as a try catch statement. Okay, so to the program's understanding, okay, so this is what you're trying to ask him to do. Okay, try to run whatever statement I have within these curly braces here. So I have to be very careful. Okay, I try run line by line, line by line. If there is any exceptions or if there's any error happening in the program, so it should be caught or it should be handled within this statement here. Okay, so in this case, let's say you have entered the wrong input, so enter digit only. Okay, so it's a message towards the user. So then what we need to do is we need to exit gracefully. So system.exit 0. Okay, so this is what we call as a basic exception handling, or this is what we call as a try catch statement. Okay, so when we talk about exception handling, it is always associated with the try catch statements. Okay, so let's run this and see. Okay, so enter a digit. If I enter a normal digit, so it should be fine. Okay, it won't invoke this two particular line here. Okay, so it runs perfectly fine. So what if user accidentally enters something wrongly? Okay, so let's say I enter H. Hmm. enter digit only. So if there is error happening, so what will happen in the program is, if there is any exception or any error happening in the try statement, the catch statement will automatically be invoked. Okay, so that's why we will see if the user entered character, so we will have the error message here. Okay, so you might be wondering, what is this exception EX here? What does it mean? Okay, this is actually pretty simple. So catch, you have to let the program knows what is the exception that you are trying to handle. Okay, in this case, I put in exception, means that this is actually the generic exception. Okay, what does it mean by generic exception? Means that I will handle what sort of error, any sort of error, it will be handled here. That is what we call as a generic exceptions. So if let's say I want to I want to be specific, okay, so I want to handle something specific, is very easy also. So we can put in the error message that we are trying to handle. So in this case, it should be the input mismatch exception. Okay, you can be specific or you can be generic. Okay, so if let's say in your program there is a lot of error that you have to handle, and then you don't want to handle it one by one, you want to handle it one shot. It's very simple. So you can actually put a generic exception. Okay, and then for try catch statements, we will have something else, which is what we call as a finally statement. So the final statement here is actually a statement, okay, where it will be invoked regardless, okay, less of having any exception or not. Okay, so meaning with or without exception, this particular statement here will be executed regardless. Okay, so means that I don't care whether I have any errors or not, it will be still invoked. Okay, so let's try. Okay, oops, sorry. Okay, so let's run it. So this is without error, so it will still be invoked. Okay, so if with error, so it will be, wait a minute, oh here, because of this exit here. Okay, so let's say, okay, enter digit only and finally, so it will be invoked regardless of whether we have any exceptions or not. Okay, so just now the case was I put the exit statement here, means I tell the program to stop. Okay, so after I remove it, it will run here the final statement also. Okay, so that is what we call as a try catch finally statement. Okay, and then we still also have two more things, okay, which is the throws keyword and also throw. Okay, so what does it actually mean? Very simple. So let's have a method. Okay, so for this throws here, the one with s is actually a declaration. So we are telling the program, hey, program, in this method, let's say for example, in this method here, okay, if I put something like this, input mismatch exception, so I'm telling the program, hey program, so this method here called take input, it might have the possibility that it will throw the input mismatch exception. So the one with s, it is always be at the declaration. Okay, so it will always be at the declaration of the methods. Okay, so we're telling the program this, for this methods here, it is possible that it will throw the input mismatch exception. Okay, so that is the one with s. But whereas for the one without s, throw, this is actually a verb, means that after I handle this exception, I should throw it out or not, or there is a possibility that I will throw this exception. So this is a verb. Okay, I will throw this exception out. Okay, so let's say for example, after I handle it, I want to throw it out. Okay, so throw it out to the caller. Maybe I want the caller to handle it again, or I may want to notify the caller whether there is any exceptions or not. So I can throw this out. Okay, so the one without s is actually the verb. Okay, throw out the exceptions. Okay, throw out to my caller. Whereas the one with s, it is actually the declaration. Okay, so normally we put the one with s in declaration, and then the one without s, it is actually the verb. Okay. Alright, so it concludes our try catch statements, or what we call as exception handling, for our video here. So I'll see you guys again in the next video. I'll see you again, and bye bye.